Something became aware of you, even before you clicked on this video. Not the system, not luck, something deeper than that. Before a single word reached your mind, before you even realized why you paused here, something inside you reacted, not loudly, but clearly. A pull, and it hasn't disappeared. It's still there, right now. So before we go any further, type "received" in the comments if you feel like this moment isn't accidental, because what you're about to experience wasn't meant to be random. The moment before you realize. Stop for a moment. Don't move forward. Don't rush ahead. Just be here, because something has already taken place. Before you clicked this video, before you understood what pulled you in, something inside you responded, not through logic, but through instinct. A quiet pull, a subtle awareness, something you didn't consciously choose. And that's important. Right now, you may not fully understand why you're here. And that's okay, because the strongest signals don't come with explanations. They come as a feeling, a sense that something is not the same, something you can't easily define, but you can feel it. Think back over the past few days, or maybe the past few weeks. Something has shifted, not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough to unsettle your usual state. Moments where you felt distant, moments where things seemed unfamiliar, moments where you started questioning yourself and everything around you. And at first, you dismissed it. You told yourself it's just pressure, just overthinking, just another phase. But it didn't fade, because this isn't random. There's something you've been holding on to, something within you, not visible to others, but very real to you. A tension, a heaviness. Maybe it rests in your chest. Maybe it lingers in your thoughts. Maybe it appears at night when everything goes quiet. And even when you try to distract yourself, it doesn't leave. Here's something most people never realize. If something continues to stay, it's not without reason. It's there because it carries meaning. And the more you ignore it, the more it grows. This is how signals work. They don't begin loudly. They start quietly, with thoughts, with emotions, with repeating patterns that slowly demand your attention. But if you keep ignoring them, they intensify. They become clearer, more noticeable, more uncomfortable, more difficult to dismiss, until eventually they bring you to a moment like this, where something inside you finally stops resisting and starts paying attention. You didn't arrive here by chance. You were drawn here. That's why this feels different from everything else you've seen. That's why you're still watching, because something within you recognizes this. But before we go further, there's something you need to understand. The fact that you're still here, after everything you've experienced, after everything you've carried silently, after every moment you could have given up but didn't. That is not ordinary strength. That is something deeper. There is a part of you that didn't collapse, even when nothing made sense, even when you felt alone, even when nothing around you reflected what you were going through. You stayed, and you kept moving forward. That part of you, that's your signal. That's your foundation. That's the part of you that reality responds to. Because life doesn't only react to your actions, it responds to your presence, to the energy you maintain over time, to the version of you that continues to show up even under pressure. And right now, that version of you is being challenged, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Something is trying to reach you, not through words, but through patterns, through repetition, through quiet moments where everything slows down and you're finally able to feel what you've been avoiding. And this exact moment is where things begin to change. The language you were never taught. Most people live their entire lives believing something that quietly limits them. They assume everything is random, that life just unfolds without structure, that events have no deeper connection, that nothing is really being communicated to them. But that belief is exactly what keeps them blind. Because reality isn't silent, it's constantly speaking. Just not in the way you were ever taught to understand. The world doesn't communicate through words. It speaks through patterns, through timing, through repeated experiences that continue until you finally notice them. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever seen the same situation appear again and again? The same thought, the same kind of outcome, the same type of people entering your life. At first, it feels like chance. Then it happens again and again, until eventually you can't ignore it anymore. That isn't coincidence. That isn't bad luck. That's a signal. Because when something keeps showing up in your life, it's not trying to disturb you. It's trying to reveal something you haven't yet recognized. But this is where most people go wrong. They don't slow down. They don't reflect. They react instead. They feel frustrated. They point fingers. They try to escape the situation as quickly as possible, without ever asking the question that actually matters: why is this happening again? And because they never ask, they never see the truth. And because they never see it, the cycle continues, stronger, deeper, harder to ignore. This is how reality guides awareness, not by handing you answers, but by repeating the question until you finally face it. Now there's another form of signal, and this one is even more misunderstood. Resistance. When something in your life refuses to progress, no matter how much effort you apply, no matter how hard you push, no matter how much you want it, it simply doesn't move. Most people interpret this as failure, as rejection, as proof they're not capable enough. But what if that interpretation is wrong? What if that resistance is protection? What if that closed path is preventing you from going somewhere that doesn't align with who you're becoming? Because not everything you desire is meant for you. Sometimes you pursue things because they feel familiar, because they feel comfortable, because they made sense in the past. But as you grow, those same things no longer fit. And instead of forcing progress, life begins to push back, not to stop you, but to guide you somewhere better. This is where most people give up, because they believe effort should always create results. But alignment is stronger than effort. When something is truly meant for you, it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. It unfolds, not perfectly, but in a way that makes sense over time. Opportunities appear, paths open, connections form in ways you didn't expect. But when something isn't right for you, everything feels heavy, draining, like you're constantly fighting against something unseen. That isn't weakness, that's misalignment. And if you're honest with yourself right now, there's probably something in your life that feels exactly like that, something that keeps resisting no matter what you do. That isn't a sign to try harder. That's a sign to think deeper. Because reality isn't asking you, how strong are you? It's asking you, are you aware? And then there's the third signal, the one most people completely overlook: intuition, that quiet inner knowing. The kind that doesn't follow logic, the kind that can't be explained. But still, you feel it. A sudden urge to step back, a feeling to trust something without proof, a sense that something is off, even when everything appears normal. That isn't fear, that is awareness. It's your mind detecting patterns before you can consciously explain them. But because there's no visible evidence, most people dismiss it. And every time they ignore it, they drift a little further away from themselves. But you've experienced it. That moment when you just knew, before anything unfolded, before anything made sense, before anything was confirmed, you already knew. That isn't random, that is connection. And right now, all three signals are active in your life. Patterns repeating, resistance building, intuition trying to guide you. They've been pointing you somewhere, trying to redirect you, trying to get your attention. And the longer you ignore them, the louder they become. But the moment you start listening, everything begins to shift. Because at that point, you're no longer just reacting to life. You're beginning to understand it. Why everything feels different now. There comes a point in every person's journey when life stops feeling familiar. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, but gradually. The things that once brought you excitement no longer affect you the same way. The people you once felt close to begin to feel distant. The life you built around yourself starts to feel unfamiliar. And that's when the confusion starts. Because from the outside, nothing seems wrong. Everything still looks normal. But on the inside, something has shifted. You try to push the feeling away. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that you should appreciate what you have, that nothing is actually wrong. But deep within, you sense it. Something is different. And that unease you can't quite explain. That isn't something to fix. That's something to understand. Because growth doesn't always feel like improvement. Sometimes it feels like everything is falling apart. And this is where most people struggle. They try to return, back to old habits, back to familiar people, back to who they used to be. Because there, everything felt stable, even if it wasn't truly right. But here's the reality. Once you've outgrown something, you can't fully return to it. You might try, you might hold on, but it will never feel the same again, because you're no longer the same person. And that's exactly where you are now, somewhere in between. No longer who you were, but not fully who you're becoming yet. And that space, it feels uncertain, uncomfortable, unsteady. But it's also a crucial stage, because this is where transformation happens. This is where your identity begins to reshape itself. Not based on expectations, not based on past conditioning, but based on what truly fits who you are becoming. And sometimes, that process involves letting go, not as punishment, but as preparation. Think about it. Certain parts of your life were never meant to remain forever. Some people, some experiences, some versions of yourself, they were temporary by design. They belonged to a past version of you, not your future. But when they leave, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like loss. Because even if something no longer serves you, it was still familiar, still known, still part of your identity. So when it disappears, you feel the absence strongly. And this is where most people misinterpret the situation. They assume loss means something went wrong. But what if it doesn't? What if loss is actually refinement? What if it's life removing what no longer matches your inner state? Because you can't move forward while holding on to what belongs to where you came from. And right now, something in your life has shifted or is beginning to shift. A change in direction, a change in thinking, a change in what you accept and what you refuse. You're becoming more aware, more intentional, more aligned with what feels right to you. And that creates separation. Distance from things that no longer match you. Distance from people who don't understand you anymore. Distance from a version of life that once felt normal, but now feels limiting. And yes, that distance can feel isolating, because not everyone evolves at the same time. Not everyone sees what you're beginning to see. But that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It means you're changing. And change always separates before it connects again. Before you find what truly aligns with you, you must release what no longer does. That's the part people rarely talk about. They talk about success. They talk about clarity. They talk about becoming better. But they don't talk about this phase. The uncertain part, the quiet part, the phase where nothing feels stable, but something inside you refuses to return to what was. That is where you are. And the fact that you're still here, still reflecting, still questioning, still searching, means you haven't given up. And that matters more than you realize. Because this stage, it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one. When reality begins to respond to you, there reaches a point in your journey when everything you've experienced starts to connect. Not instantly, but in quiet moments. Moments where something suddenly makes sense. A conversation that feels perfectly timed. A message that appears exactly when you needed it. An idea that clears up after days or even weeks of confusion. At first, you don't think much of it. You label it as coincidence. But then it happens again and again. And slowly, you begin to notice something unusual. Life seems to be responding to you, not in an obvious or loud way, but in subtle, precise, almost intentional ways, as if everything is adjusting around you, shifting, aligning with something within you. And that's because it is. The moment you stop fighting yourself, the moment you begin to act with honesty, with awareness, with alignment to what you truly feel, something inside you changes. Your inner state shifts. And when that shifts, your reality begins to shift as well. You start encountering different conversations, different opportunities, different kinds of people. Not because you forced it, but because your state changed. You became the kind of person who naturally draws it in. This is the stage where life feels different, less forced, less chaotic, less unclear. Not perfect, but more understandable. You begin to recognize patterns that were always there. You start seeing why certain things didn't unfold. You begin to understand how everything led you to this point. And the most powerful realization? You stop chasing. Because you come to understand something most people never fully grasp. What is meant for you doesn't require force. It comes, not suddenly, not through luck, but naturally, through alignment, through timing, through becoming someone who is ready to receive it. And this is the turning point. Because before this, you were trying to control everything, trying to make outcomes happen, trying to push things into place. But now, you begin to trust, not blindly, but with awareness. You start to recognize that every delay, every rejection, every change in direction was guiding you. Even the moments that felt painful, even the moments that confused you, even the moments that made you question everything. They weren't blocking you, they were shaping you, preparing you. Because what's ahead in your life requires a different version of you, a stronger one, a clearer one, a more aligned one. And that's the version you're stepping into. Now here's where things go deeper. As you begin to align internally, you'll notice something else. Certain things no longer affect you the same way. Situations that once drained your energy no longer have that impact. People who once triggered strong reactions lose their control over you. Challenges that once felt overwhelming start to feel manageable. Why? Because your internal state has changed. And when that changes, your external experience begins to follow. You're no longer reacting to everything around you. You're observing, you're understanding, you're choosing how to respond. And that gives you something most people never develop: stability. Not control over everything around you, but control over yourself. And that is where real strength begins. Because when you can regulate yourself, the outside world loses its power to destabilize you. That's what alignment creates. A sense of inner steadiness, even when life itself is uncertain. And right now, you're starting to step into that state. You're beginning to think differently, feel differently, see things from a new perspective. And that's why this moment matters. Because you are no longer the same person you were before. And the life you are entering is no longer the same as the one you left behind. Everything is shifting. And for the first time, you are no longer resisting the change, you are moving with it. The message you were meant to hear. Pay attention now, because this is the point where most people never arrive. Everything you've experienced, everything you've carried, everything that seemed confusing or out of place was never random. It was building you, preparing you, not for something minor, not for something temporary, but for a transformation that required you to become someone new. And now you're here, not by coincidence, not by luck, but because something inside you was ready to perceive differently, ready to think differently, ready to stop living on autopilot. And something greater than you has been waiting for this moment. Not to challenge you further, but to respond to you. Because now, you're no longer overlooking the signals. You're starting to recognize them. And that changes everything. Here's something most people never understand. You don't chase your path. You grow into it. Through how you think, through how you respond, through the choices you make, especially when it's difficult. Your life doesn't transform instantly, but your direction does. And direction is what shapes everything. Right now, you've reached a point most people never consciously experience. A moment of awareness where you must decide, return to what's familiar, predictable, and limiting, or step forward into something uncertain, but aligned with who you are becoming. And that decision? It won't always feel comfortable, because the older version of you will try to pull you back through hesitation, through doubt, through thoughts that whisper, what if this fails? What if I'm making a mistake? What if I lose everything? But what you need to understand is this: you are not losing your life. You are releasing what no longer belongs in it. And that distinction matters. Because every time you choose growth, you open space. Space for better thinking. Space for better connections. Space for better opportunities. Not because you're fortunate, but because you're aligned. And alignment is what everything responds to. Now reflect on how you got here. Every challenge, every delay, every moment that didn't go as planned. What if none of it was working against you? What if it was all guiding you? to this exact moment. A moment where you stop asking, "Why is this happening?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That shift alone can reshape your entire experience, because now you're no longer just reacting to life. You're aware of it, present within it, aligned with it. And once you reach this level, there's no returning to who you were, because now you can see. You see patterns, you see signals, you see the meaning behind what once felt unclear. And that awareness, that is your real strength. Not control over everything around you, but clarity within yourself. And clarity is something most people spend their entire lives searching for. But you've begun to find it, or at the very least, you've started to notice it. And that's why this moment matters. Because this is not an ending. This is a beginning. A new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new way of understanding your life. And from here, everything begins to evolve. Not immediately, but inevitably, because once you align with yourself, your reality has no choice but to follow. If this message felt like it was meant for you, type "I see it" in the comments. And if you're ready to go deeper, to understand the patterns most people miss, subscribe now. Because in the next video, you'll discover what happens when you finally start responding, instead of ignoring the signals around you.